Howdy fellas, B Junior here, hanging out in the cave. Gonna tackle a little subject that's been on my mind here recently. Gonna take my time with it. What I want to talk to you guys about is in and around the horror movie genre. You know, it's one of my favorite, if not my favorite genre ever, because it's got the best rewatchability and it just gives you the best thrills, best bang for your buck ever in movies, I think. Sci-fi and action would be a close second in my opinion. What I'm going to talk about today is, you know, you always hear people talk about the slump that horror movies are in right now. That's true. We are in a horror movie slump. But one thing that you have to remember, now if you ever watch my older videos and man cave videos, all that stuff, you know I'm a late 70s, 80s horror fan. That's the era of horror movies that I love the most and will always love the most. Let's go ahead and get the disclaimer out there. But we have to all realize that the 80s aren't coming back. We can watch retro movies filmmakers can make retro movies till the cows come home. Some are good, some aren't. And that's the part of the thing that sparked the interest in doing this video today is that, you know, you always hear about, well, there's not as many horror movies coming out nowadays and all that. That's true. And you're not going to see that right now. Back in the 80s, well, actually, really the whole decade of the 80s, you had a horror movie coming out about every other week at the movie theaters, no matter what time of year. We're just not in that time anymore. So what we have to concentrate is we have to realize the fact that there's probably less quantity horror movies out there, but there are some decent, noteworthy horror movies that have come out in the last decade or so, and that's what I want to do the video on today. Horror movies that are noteworthy, probably not the best or not the worst, but just ones that I think are worth viewing that have come out within the last decade, give or take a year or two. And I'm going to do the high def stack I pulled off the collection today, and I've pulled out a stack of standard def ones that I have in my collection that we'll do in part 2 to this video. And I'm just going to go through the stack and just tell you the ones that I recommend and I think that deserve maybe at least a viewing of your time, basically. I got me a brew here. I'm going to pop it open in your honor, guys. We're going to get through this in the best manner possible. Here's to you guys out there. Clink. Let's do this, fellas. Excuse a couple of these. I've got a couple of the covers out for autograph requests through the mail. I've started doing again. First one that's noteworthy, Dawn of the Dead remake. Oh, and before I get into this too far, let me go ahead and say horror comedies such as Shaun of the Dead and or horror action movies like Underworld or Blade I've left out of this list, and as well as like psychological thrillers like Silence of the Lambs, Red Dragon, all those. I've left those off the list. These are just straight what I consider horror movies. So some are remakes and some aren't. Some are just original stuff. But regardless, these are ones that I think that have come out in the last give or take decade that I think are worth everybody's time, or the ones that I enjoyed the most. Dawn of the Dead remake. Zack Snyder did his own movie, much like John Carpenter did The Thing remake, and David Cronenberg did his own The Fly. That's why I think this movie works. It's got good rewatchability. Second one in the high def horrors here that I can recommend. I'm going to get blasted on a few of these guys, but honestly, I don't give a crap today. We're in it to win it. Just B Junior's list all the way. The Skeleton Key. That's right. Kay Hudson. You know, just a creepy little story. Sometimes I like those little creepy little movies. I don't like these big budgeted movies a whole lot of times because it's like a lot of money for nothing. And the Skeleton Key, I'm kind of biased because I've always been a real big fan of ghost stories, even when I shouldn't be that much a fan. But the Skeleton Key, I don't think it will disappoint at least one viewing to see how the mystery plays out in the movie. The highly underrated Michael Keaton joint from Universal, White Noise. A lot of these, like I say, are going to be ghost stories or ghost oriented and stuff like that. Now, I don't believe in a whole lot of the stuff that you see on TV, the ghost hunter shows and all that, but the thing about it is this movie is genuinely creepy. It's got some good scare moments in it, and it's good to watch on maybe like a rainy, dark night, in my opinion. Really good little flick. Another one, another remake, oddly enough, surprising to a lot of people probably. The remake of House of Wax. This one's got that good in that bad way character to it, and it's also basically its own movie. They didn't hold to the source material too close. They kind of did it their own way, and I don't know. I've just always enjoyed this one. Um, Paris Hilton in a horror movie of this nature just is it's worth at least a viewing, just to see how bad her acting is and things of that nature. So I don't know. It's a Silver Pictures Warner Brothers joint, and I don't know. I kind of enjoyed this one. Might not be everybody's taste. I enjoyed it. It's got good rewatchability. The kill scenes are good in it. The killer is interesting. It's different. Here's one that I've got signed by one of the fellows from the movies. This is a horror 2-pack, and both movies I can recommend. It is Rob Zombie's The Devil's Rejects and House of a Thousand Corpses. This one's been signed by Bill Moseley, who played Otis in both movies. I can honestly say, guys, these are pound for pound the best 2 movies that Rob Zombie's ever put out so far. I'm hoping for good stuff from the Lords of Salem coming out soon. But there again, the whole point of this video in the last decade, it's the whole quality over quantity. There's been a lot of stuff put out, but a lot of it's pure junk and stuff that I wouldn't watch ever again. So, Nightmare on Elm Street remake. But anyway, sorry, what did I say there? Sorry about that. Anyway, Devil's Rejects, House of a Thousand Corpses, oddly enough, are 2 totally different movies, but they have linking characters between the movies. They're totally different in the style. This one being kind of your more funhouse 70s kind of weirdness kind of movie, freak show kind of movie. Devil's Rejects is kind of like your killers on the run, kind of weird psychopath Texas Chainsaw atmosphere. So anyway, both I think are worth a viewing. 28 Days Later, it's my favorite out of these so far. I think there's only 2 of these out so far. They're still working on the 28 Months Later or whatever it is, but haven't heard too much else about that franchise. But Danny Boyle, who directed Trainspotting and a few other, he's a British director. I believe he's British. He's either British or Scottish, one of the 2. Forgive me if I got that wrong. 28 Days Later, probably one of the best infected people movies, zombie movie. I mean, whatever you want to call it. Pretty good little flick. I always enjoyed that one. I too am one of those that's tired of the whole running zombies versus walking zombies. At the end of the day, they're still zombies. Who gives a crap? I mean, it's just, I don't care. I think people got too much time on their hands. Kind of like people who sit around and give recommendations, you know. No, I'm just kidding anyway. Anyway, here's a little Japanese horror that kind of a camp's divided. A lot of people like it. A lot of people don't. I personally like it. Yeah, you can blast me if you want. The Grudge, Sarah Michelle Gellar. Buffy herself in a Japanese ghost story remake or redo, however you want to call it. I really enjoyed it. It's one of those that just has creepy images in it, and this one and The Ring are probably my 2 favorite Americanized ones ever that they ever made during that time. There's been a lot of rip-offs and just countless imitations, but this is one of my faves. Here's one that's really people are going to blast me over, and excuse my ex-rental cover here, but I got this for $1 at a Blockbuster closing. It's The Haunting of Connecticut. This has the theatrical and the, well, I guess you would call it Chinchi unrated. They love to call it an unrated version, but The Haunting of Connecticut, it's a creepy little ghost story. It's got the most terrible CGI during this part of the movie where he's shooting diarrhea out of his mouth. They call it ectoplasm, but looks like diarrhea. I'm sorry. But it's got some really creepy parts in it. If you got good sound system, it really helps. And Virginia Madsen's always great to watching a horror movie, so I really enjoyed it. I mean, I'm like I said, kind of biased about ghost stories. They're just interesting to me. People's reaction to ghost stories. But also, I watched I think it was Discovery Channel or one of those did an hour or 2 hour documentary on this true life event or whatever this is based on. But the only problem is the first and second act of this movie is really good. Third act of this film, where it tries to tie everything up, it's basically a rip-off fest. There's a lot of Poltergeist and Amityville Horror rip-off parts in the ending of this movie. So, I don't know. It's worth a viewing, I think. I can highly recommend it for at least a viewing, if you like ghost stories especially. One of the most This next one is one of those that's going to go down in history as one of those that should have went to the movie theaters but didn't. But it still came out and found its audience almost instantly. It is Trick or Treat, horror anthology movie of the last decade, probably around '07 when this one came out. This movie is atmospheric. It's an instant classic. People are going to be watching this and buying this every single year as long as it's available. I guarantee you, because it just screams, even through the artwork, the stories involved. It's got stories about zombies. It's got werewolves, vampirism, psycho. I mean, you name it. This movie's got a little bit of everything in it, and it ties all the stories together. Can't say enough about it. Done review. Check out my old review on it if you want to know more about it. Oh yeah, that was a good one. Good 6.9 on the Richter scale. I'm hoping for some more longevity as the video goes on. Now, the next one, a lot of people will differ with me on, is Splice. That's right. Splice, some people can argue it's sci-fi horror and all that, but it's the most new age Cronenberg-esque film I've ever seen in a long time, because Cronenberg is doing more artsy films now and revenge films, things like that. This movie, it has basically a horror movie ending to it, of course, but it's got that whole body horror and toying with nature Cronenberg atmosphere, even though Cronenberg didn't have anything to do with it. I don't know if that's what they were going for, but it's definitely one that's noteworthy. That's what this whole video is about. These aren't Barry's or B. Junior's favorites of all time. This is just my noteworthy, not the best, not the worst, but from the last decade that I can recommend. Splice is in there with them. Yeah. Haven't opened this one yet, but I intend to very soon when I do the next Scream marathon here in the man cave. Scream 4, I had to throw it in there because it was a return to the old, well, I don't want to call it old school, but return to the 90s type style of horror. I thought it was a decent entry, although it didn't do too well at the box office, I don't think, or it had some problems with getting a whole lot of return on its investment. I hope they make more. I hope they make another two to make another trilogy, because this one was definitely a good old Scream outing. Probably not the best. The first one's always going to be the best to me. But I think Wes Craven did a good job with it. Pretty good little true to form sequel. Quarantine. That's right. It is a Americanized redo of the Spanish or Mexican film, I think. Record or Rec, however you want to say it. I do have Rec on standard def over there, but I like Quarantine better. I don't know why, but I do. A lot of people differ with me. Camp's Divided movie. Genuinely creepy. Great atmosphere. Always enjoyed this film, and I watch it about at least once a year since it's been out. So since I've owned it. Rock on. Here's another remake that I thought was really fun. I mean, I love the original, but this one I love just as much as the original. I don't know why, but I do. It's Piranha, or Piranha 3D, whichever you have. The Piranha remake, bad CGI, yes. Goofy moments abound, but that's what made it feel like an 80s horror film. There was great practical special effects, especially during the ending massacre scene in the movie. Uh, any movie that has Ving Rhames holding a boat motor, chopping up piranhas left and right, is a good movie in my mind. Yeah, this is one of those that whenever I watched this at the movie theater, I think it did come out in the summer, but it didn't come out on home video till the fall or winter time. I couldn't wait for summertime again, because this movie just reminds you of having fun down at the beach or down at the coast or the lake or just somewhere goofing around. That's the way I felt about it anyway. Looks great on high def. I say pick it up. Let me in. Knock on that door and let me in. That's right. Americanized redo of Let the Right One In. I love Let the Right One In. However, I do not have that movie yet in the collection. I've only got the Americanized redo called Let Me In, which I believe I enjoyed just about as much. It's not quite as good as Let the Right One In, but I did like this one. The girl Chloe Moretz played a really good part in the movie as the vampire, and I think they did a really good job. Good atmosphere, hit all the right points from the original. So hey, I couldn't be happier. Pretty good little flick. Good vampire, different kind of vampire flick. Here's an instant one that I just loved from the first time I saw it. And I'm sorry if people differ with me, but it's still a great flick. The Innkeepers. It was fun. It was a ghost story, but it was a ghost story done right. They didn't jam the whole ghost hunting jargon and lingo and all that crap down your throat, EVP sessions and all that. They did do some of that in the movie, but it's not overused. They let the story unfold in a slow burn, like most horror films that I like. You know, you have to have an attention span better than a gnat on crack. And if you do have that, Innkeepers won't disappoint. I enjoyed this film. Another foreign film. This is a French joint, I believe, called High Tension, or I think it's pronounced Haute Tension overseas or something like that. Um, great, great horror film, foreign horror film that has the old school feel to it, practical effects, and there's some CGI in it, but it's very dismissive. You can't really tell it in some spots, or in most spots. Good twist ending. Good little film. Really enjoyed it. Got good rewatchability, oddly enough. I've watched that one a few times. Another remake that didn't bother me, Friday the 13th. Mainly because they followed the quote-unquote guidelines. Get the kids out to the woods. Line them up. Put Jason in the mix. Don't worry about backstory. Throw some TNA in there, some drinking, partying, and let Jason loose. That's what this movie was and is, and oddly enough, it's growing on me by the minute. I've watched this one a good few times now, and it doesn't quite bother me as much as the first time I saw it, and it didn't really bother me that much then. The main thing that bothered me then and bothers me now is the product placement music score or music tracks in the movie. They need Harry Manfredini music or something like it in the movie, a redo of that. They don't have it in this one. They got a few cues here and there, but they got all that, you know, they have to sell the soundtrack with the movie, make money. So anyway, that's something that ever bothered me about that one. Hoping for another good burp for you guys. Hadn't got one yet. I'm working on it. Working on it. Drag Me to Hell. That's right. Sam Raimi's Return to Horror. Didn't bother me that much. The only thing that bothers me about that, it bothered me at the movie theater and it bothers me at the house, is the sound mix on this movie. They amped up the sound so much that you have to literally, even with your soundbar, you have to keep turning it up and turning it down because the voice track is so soft. You can barely hear people talk, but then when things happen, I know they did it for effect, but whenever you get it home and you just want to watch it for watching its sake, it's annoying. But overall, I think that's what they were going for, and they achieved it. So, Drag Me to Hell, not a bad horror movie, not as bad as people make it out. I think some people are way too critical of people sometimes, but hey, just enjoy it. That's what I always say. Try to enjoy it. Oh, I'm waiting for the big one. No burps yet. Waiting for the big one. Dog Soldiers. This is a Scottish-made horror movie about werewolves. It does have action in it, but it's got more horror than action, I thought. Oh, yeah. Now, that was the one I was waiting for. Good, solid 8.0 on the Richter scale. A little bit of apple in there. A little bit of hops, maybe. I don't know. Too much carbonation. Anyway, Dog Soldiers. I enjoyed this film. I thought it had a great atmosphere. I like werewolf films as well. And I gotta say, the reason why I like this one so much is they didn't show the werewolves that much. They showed them in quick little cuts here and there. That's the best thing. The best horror movie, the best monster movies, where you don't show the monster that much. You let people's minds run with it. They did that good in Dog Soldiers. Here's one I just threw in for giggles. This is the last one today, and it's a very, very long video of my recommendations. My Soul to Take. I'm not going to say this is a good movie by any means. It isn't. It's so bad it's good. It's just so terrible it's good. I think Wes Craven had a really hard time making this film. I don't think he and the people behind the funding of the movie got along really well or something, because I've heard him say in a couple recent interviews and stuff, just snippets here and there, that he had a real rough time making this one. He had to rest after he made it because it felt like a really thrown together project, and it was just so terrible. But if you want, I had to get at least one bad in that good way, or good in that bad way, choice in there, and that is my soul to take. Dudes, this has been the overlong, high-def, noteworthy pickups of the last decade that I can recommend. They aren't the best, not the worst, but they're worth your viewing. Take care, guys. I'll catch you next time. Rock on.